All right. So for those of you who are watching, this is the pregame. We're going live in about 1 minute. Is Carole Carle, Bill Skywatcher in the background doing his thing. And then later in the around 8:30, Ryan Sprague will be joining us. So we're about to go live very shortly.
About 30 seconds, Alan.
All right.
Have a great show to both of you.
Thank you,
Oh,
brother.
thanks, kiddo.
And you've
Talk
confirmed, right? The Dragon crew has separated from the space station, right?
Yep. A few minutes ago.
That is so cool.
That is.
And a great relief. Oh my gosh.
Now it's all about getting home safely.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. In about 5 seconds. Stand by. In 3, 2, 1, go.
However you are and whenever you are, welcome back, good souls, to Paranormal Now. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. Tonight, joining me in just the top of the show is Carole Carle of KGRA Radio, host of Behind The Obsidian Curtain. And then at 8:30, Ryan Sprague, author of Somewhere in the Skies, will be joining me. This is our second time in the new time slot. So please, if you are not familiar yet, join us every Saturday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And of course, you can find all of the KGRA archives of our past shows, including Paranormal, on Spreaker. So find KGRA on Spreaker and you can get all of those great past guests that we've had and conversations ongoing. So now I'm going to bring on Carole Carle because we have quite a bit to cover, I think, in the first 25 minutes. Don't you think, Carole?
Seems like it to me. Things are changing fast.
So fast.
Fast movers, yeah. Right.
Indeed. And quickly, we just confirmed with Bill, for those who are just tuning in and missed the 1 minute pregame show that we do now on the live stream. The NASA SpaceX crew has separated successfully from the ISS space station and is headed home to Earth.
Such good words.
So stoked. I was really excited. This year, 2020, has been a roller coaster. So many positive movements forward and so many terrible things happening at the same time. But let's focus, Carole, on the not so controversial anymore story of UFOs in the skies.
Exactly. And the very fact, that you dress it in that word, not so controversial anymore, that
Right.
phrase. Yeah, absolutely it. And I was thinking, as you said, roller coaster, for a while, didn't it seem like we were on a merry-go-round? The
Yeah.
same old stuff. And we'd go back and hit these iconic classic stories that still, have no punchline, no real answer. And now it's like people are digging with different shovels.
Indeed. Well, here's a comment from Tim F. Finally, some good news in 2020.
Yeah, hey, Tim F., right?
Yeah, and that good news is some recognition, from the mainstream media about this UFO enigma.
Exactly. And there's Danny Fan 1, better known as Amanda Curran, and she's on board too. So hello, everybody.
Hello, Amanda.
Yeah, and I so okay, I have there's been a plethora of stories
Hmm.
recently, very recently. I've got some stuff here. You'll hear the papers rattling, I'm sure. We've got from the Wall Street Journal, we have a story by Holman W. Jenkins Jr. From the New York Times, of course, we have a story that gets a byline for Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie
Hmm.
Kean, and then also here, sort of as a well, you can dress this in some sort of a way, but we've got I found on the MUFON website this intriguing thing. What do we know after 50 years? So we can, as time allows,
Yes.
um, before Ryan steps to the mic, we can bring this stuff in. Where do you want to start?
Well, since you've brought up MUFON, I know we wanted to cover that. We talked about that last week with Race Hobbs on the show.
Yeah.
So I don't want to, keep beating a dead horse, but I did want to get your take on it because I do respect your opinion and your breadth of knowledge, and not just all things paranormal, but ufology as well.
And which part of this? It's a slippery
Good
slope. So
question. Yeah.
yeah.
So, well,
Um,
there are two parts of the same coin, really.
yeah.
So Jan Harzen stepped down, or was removed rather,
Right.
because the law came after him for his illegal activities, and we don't have
Yep.
to go into detail about all that, but let's just say it's not good.
No.
And now we have a replacement, David McDonald. And
Right.
so, what is your take? Do you think that the arrest of Dan Harzen taints the image of MUFON?
Mm. That's really a sticky wicket kind of a
Mhm.
thing, because there are those who I'm sure rolled their eyes and said, "Well, move on, UFOs, of course." And we're just and in a sense, for people who are not even on the fence, they're just, they're going to throw shade in any way they can toward
Mhm.
MUFON, toward ufology in general. Um, so for them, that wasn't a good thing. I don't know what we're talking about percentage-wise. I don't know numbers. Um,
Right.
so in that sense, it wasn't a good thing. And then I find this kind of hilarious, but there are people who are saying, well, to replace Jan Harzen with David McDonald might not be the best optics possible. And yet, okay, his mile high flights, as I think Race put it so beautifully, we're talking about consenting adults. It is 100. There could be no farther thing,
Right.
from the Harzen thing to the McDonald, no far. And I guess the incredible stuff that McDonald brings to the table, is that he's been, I think, didn't he once upon a time, do I have this right, that he was in the seat that then became occupied by Harzen?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, and
Um,
so now he is again.
right. Exactly. And so it was an easy insert, which I
Yeah.
totally get. But do you think that MUFON has an image problem in the first place?
Well, there were other times when it was kind of an frisson of stuff. Back to that fellow that Race talked about. That was sort of it wasn't. It was his philosophy, his take on what I see to be a human situation. And so what this individual posted, and he ranted in terms of the fact that there were lesser or better individuals by race,
Well, I would
on Race
also
Hobbs, but yes, okay.
yes, I would also
Yeah.
say attending MUFON symposiums, the numbers were going down, which
I didn't
which
know that.
well, at least the one I attended, and having talked to some of the people who work in on those programs, there was a trend in many territories, and I think it's kind of odd that that would be the case because it seemed like MUFON was getting so much more media attention over the past 10 years. But attendances in many areas were dropping for quite some time. And I don't know what MUFON needs to do, or do they not need to do anything? Because at the end of the day, MUFON, it's about investigation. It's not about putting on entertainment or a show.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with that. It is the investigation. That's what people are crying for. And I find it sort of curious that after the initial New York Times story broke, which had a byline for her, unfortunately, this woman's name did not stick in my mind, a reporter who shared a byline with, in that initial, I think December 16th, 2017, New York Times article with Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Kean, who are still, they are the ones who put together this most recent, I think July 28th article in the New
Mhm.
York Times. So one would think that with all of this stuff coming to the fore in a very legitimate way, that it would have been a boost for MUFON. So that's a puzzlement for me.
Right. Well, I have a comment here from Tim F. Honestly, my vote
Yes.
for head of MUFON should have been Chase Kluetsky you're
Oh,
referring to.
yeah,
She's got a
yeah.
great head on her shoulders for ufology.
Oh, I concur. Yeah, she definitely knows her beans and is such a good, the way she carries herself and her use of language, et cetera. Her whole presentation is just so convincing. And do you know if she still is a lobbyist in DC? At one point, I
No
think she
longer.
was.
I don't believe any longer. No,
Ah, okay, okay.
I don't.
But she fought the good fight while she was doing that, and yeah. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. But again, addressing Tim's comment, it's sort of like that seems to me that she would have to abandon everything else she was doing and do the MUFON full time, which might not have worked for her.
Right. And so right now with what's going on in ufology as far as New York Times coverage, you know, the, the fact that we're talking about recovered craft and materials from that seem to be from out of this world, it seems like a prime time for MUFON to bring attention onto itself. And
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
not sure that that is happening and that they're not capitalizing on the trends in the news necessarily.
And I suppose that could be argued in both directions, that they're not going to go with just the flavor of the day, that they're still embedded where they were.
Hmm.
While we're on MUFON, do you want, this is kind of short. Should I read this, what we know after 50 years?
Absolutely, sure.
Okie dokie. And this is from the MUFON site. Check it out, folks. It's www.mufon.com. Um, they've got their mission statement about their history, their research, etc. But here is this thing that it may have been there for quite a while and I just never saw it. Um, the headline of this little section is, "What do we know after 50 years?" One, UFOs are real. UFOs represent advanced technology not from any country on Earth. Two, we are not alone in the universe. We never have been. Three, according to the data we collect, our universe is, quote, teeming with life, end quotes. This life may be from many places and exist in many forms. Then it goes on to say places where this life may be from. Place number one, somewhere in our known universe. Number two, other universes we cannot see. Three, interdimensional beings. Four, other places in space and time. Five, species indigenous to this planet, perhaps living underground or in our oceans, under our oceans. Six, time travelers.
Mm.
Seven, angels and demons. And eight, some other explanation. It also says it's important to know that the UFO phenomenon is worthy of scientific study because tremendous breaks allow our scientists and engineers to do so without any fear or ridicule. Breakthroughs in science, technology, etc. The future of humanity depends on it.
Right. So, okay. So this brings up a question that I've had is should there be a MUFON equivalent, but for the paranormal? Right. So an organization
Right.
that tries to take it seriously, volunteer, and investigates cryptids, ghosts, and logs and files. These investigations create responsible protocols that are more universal so that people can better study these disparate cases that may have overlapping qualities. But if you have a system and it's not just the United States, but throughout the world, I think we might actually be move more quickly along toward finding out the underlying mycelium of the paranormal.
Ah,
Now, should MUFON themselves do that and have a sister organization, or should there just be a separate organization that does that? Because it seems to me that MUFON, over I would say the past 10 years, have really opened the doors for other possibilities outside of nuts and bolts UFOs, and that is reflective at their symposiums as well. There's a lot of contention there because people go to these conventions and they say, "Wait, what the heck? Who is that person talking about angels? What does that have to do with the UFO phenomena?"
right, right. And I am thinking back. I'm thinking back to Inception Radio Network, and Heidi Hollis had Kathleen Marden on her show, and in the chat component there, I can remember hearing it myself and thinking, "Is it just me?" Or and then Heidi typed, "Did I just hear her say demons?" Okay, and yeah, I was sort of like, "Yeah, live on your show, Heidi Hollis," because that was and I think we have to go back to like 2016 maybe for that.
Mhm.
At maybe 2017, but it was early on in terms of now what I just read in terms of the list of where, what are the sources of this otherness. Point number 7 is angels and demons. So right there in print. Um, a sister organization, that would be fantastic. And as you were talking about that, it just for some reason, maybe I'm dense, but for some reason it just hit me for the first time that there really is not any um, overarching, there is no organization for the paranormal that would compare to MUFON.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So perhaps Carole Carle could head up that organization.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, as far as passion and interest, it's definitely there. I don't
Totally.
know,
Yeah.
whether it's above my pay grade, but yeah, and I don't know what would we be talking about in terms of like a some sort of an international. I love the aspect of having this be international. It's so much easier than it ever was thanks to the internet. But I'm thinking of some place, where we can get like a collection, some sort of a database thing of paranormal experiences. And that's slippery in the terms of there are people who set out to see ghosts and predisposition, et cetera, and they will see ghosts. Now that doesn't, I'm not trying to say that if you're convinced you're not, that takes away the legitimacy.
Right.
But isn't it a little harder to correlate, for instance, mass sightings of spirits? Probably what would make that up would be like how many hits on a video, of a ghost in a library, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
I don't know how you could put that together.
I
Um,
think you'd have to start somewhere. Um, you know, and you don't even have a clear hypothesis. So I think what you just do
yes.
is try to collect data in real time as possible. So that way you can go back later and analyze it. And then as you move forward, I think certain pieces of the puzzle might come together so that you know what the next lane of study is. What do you have to add to
Ooh,
your
that's
tool?
good.
What do you need to add to your toolkit? Because you're right, it's this just plethora of
Yeah.
phenomena, and the only way to find out if it's connected or not is to just start analyzing a body of data. But you have to have a framework of study, a framework of data input that is recognized by people in different disciplines, whether it's cryptozoology or ufology or poltergeists.
Right.
That a general consensus is okay. This framework works for the most part for each of these fields, and then you just tweak it along the way
Ooh, that's good. Like using it, using the ufology studies of MUFON as a template.
as a template, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
start building out as you learn more, because you'll start getting real-time feedback from investigators and witnesses. Like, Nightcap when they receive a phone call from different areas of, let's say there's a sighting in Oregon,
Mhm.
you can start looking at that data, right? And you can say, oh, maybe we can triangulate where this thing actually occurred. I don't know what the poltergeist equivalent with that might be. However, like you said before, what if there are a multitude of ghost sightings that we otherwise would think are completely separate events? And then now you see on a chart, oh wait, what? There's all these sightings happening here and there all at the same time that no one else noted prior to this.
Ooh, ooh, I like that. And then, of course, what just crossed my mind was
Mhm.
we have then the Bigfoot phenomena, and the times when things are seen in the sky, and either boom, there's a Bigfoot, or boom, that Bigfoot I was just looking at is gone. Okay, so
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
seems to be, at least anecdotally, a lot of connection. And for me, it's just my whole thing is that this is all connected.
Yeah.
It's all we have to find out how. Maybe not even the why. First, let's find out if it is, and then how could it be connected?
Right. And people might say, what do you mean it's all connected? Well, all sciences are connected, right?
Yes,
The study of geology helps us understand the evolution of biology. Understanding the Big Bang and the expansion of the cosmos,
right.
helps us understand the underlying physics behind it all. So it technically is all connected. So if you understand, let's say, the behavior of one mammal species, now you study another mammal, right? You're going to find overlapping similarities, even if they live in completely different, biospheres. And I think
Right.
that that's hopefully what we would find in in our imaginary
Yeah.
investigation unit.
Right. Hey, it works
Yeah.
for me. But yeah, it's just, and then another thing that just crossed my mind is
Mhm.
that big, I don't want to call it an abyss. Is it a chasm? It's a split between, there are people who are absolutely convinced that there is no correlation between anything in the, shall we say, hauntings, paranormal, where spirits are seen, etc., and UFOs, and they will they're dug into that, I'm afraid. I don't know. I don't know percentages or actual numbers, but that is my takeaway, is that they don't. I don't know what that is. An exclusion? Is that kind of like my dog's bigger than your dog? Or I don't really know what ever drove that, but it seems to exist.
Okay, so Carol, I have to say this. I'm getting comments. One comment is, let Carol know, considering all the shows I listened to, she is by far your best guest. Knowledge, upbeat, inquisitive, clarity of voice. So bravo.
Oh
Um,
my God! You can tell me later who said that, but bless your heart and all your other vital organs. That is. Oh, thank you. That feels really good.
yeah, well, that one actually comes from my father, so I'll let that one in.
Oh, hey, give your
But
dad a big
he's a
hug.
regular
That
listener.
is terrific. Oh, yeah. Oh,
Um,
wow. And I want to say he produced an incredible son. So, yes.
oh, well, thank you so much, Carol.
Well, you're welcome.
Well, but knowing you is one of my great friendship pleasures in life for sure. But without
Oh,
patting
kiddo,
each other on the
right
back
back.
too
No,
much,
right back at
I,
you. Yeah,
I do want
thank
to
you.
say
All
that
right.
there are a number of comments, and everyone's asking, "Where is Carol?"
I'll be darned. Oh, well, shall I tell him?
If you want, or you can keep it
Oh,
top secret. Either way.
no, dark and mysterious. Well, actually, no. It's more like the most a world class sty on my right eyelid. I thought I had it beat, and I followed all the things that I was reading, and blah blah blah, and it was gone, but it's back. And unless we were doing something on horrible things that happen to the human face, it sort of skews the conversation. And I can't put makeup on it, so it's that vanity thing kicking in, I guess. But anyway, that's where I am. I'm in my same old secure and undisclosed location. Well, it's Claremont, California, but anyway, yeah. But it's just sort of like okay, so that's that, and enough about that. But
Well,
yes,
what do you think? 2020 has yet to, you know,
oh,
to let go. So
doggone.
do you think that
I
what
don't
we
know, but I just want to say I would love to hear you pose that question to Ryan. I think that that I would love to
well,
hear his answer to that. But so
yeah.
And I don't know. You know, I do not. I'm interested in conspiracy theories. I'll check them out. Sometimes the takeaway is, well, you know, that might be something you want to consider,
Mhm.
etc. But I'm just wondering how much. Uh, I get some information through the grapevine that there are a lot of people who do podcasts, et cetera, who are not really leaning into UFOs or ufology at the moment. They're rather looking for something else, feeling this topic has grown old and stale, and yet hold the phone because we have all this breaking stuff from the most legitimate, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, right? The
Mhm.
fact that there are eyes opening and that there are words actually being typed, printed, published, um, and and I don't know. So I get the feeling that maybe what we're heading for is some sort of I don't know, shall I say a quarantine of information coming out?
Mm.
Will we see something like an attempt to disparage the subject matter once again? Because that way you don't get curious minds examining what is coming to the press.
Yeah, and we discussed earlier the Washington Post article that was a little tongue in cheek. I think that's their way of keeping themselves dipping their toes in the water of serious coverage of ufology, but also keeping themselves safe. But Carol, we have to leave it there. We're going to break.
Yes,
Thank you
let's,
so
because
much, as always.
I mean, it is a broad spectrum of stuff, and it's all coming down. So, years ago, I came up with this phrase, "survival of the best informed." Yeah, and I don't know if it's a question of survival, not talking about, this hideous virus beast, but I just wonder if survival perhaps also means quality of life, and stay on top of stuff, folks. Read a little bit of a lot of things published in a lot of places and see if you can get a pulse, get your finger on what that pulse is. So listen, thank you, Alan. This has been a treat, and I will be here anytime you need me, and have a great rest of your show.
Thank you so much, Carol. Take care. All right, everyone, stay tuned. Ryan Sprague is coming next, and we'll be talking about his second edition of Somewhere in the Sky. So hang in there. You do not want to miss this. Ryan has a lot of new information to share with us. This is Alan B. Smith for KGRA Radio every Saturday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Stay with us. We will be right back on the inverted side of the upside down.
Lost in a bad way, cost me my family. Chaos around me, can't hear my heart say, hey, that's the wrong way. Hey, that's the wrong way. Hey, that's the wrong way. That's the wrong.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Are you still at it?
Yeah, I need more speed.
This baby's fast.
My dad's fast. He's scary fast.
You really think you could beat him?
Yeah, because I drink more tea than he does.
Yeah, right.
You know, pal, it's the tea that makes you go. Oh. Hey, Dad.
You know, kiddo, you have to drink a lot more tea to be faster than me.
Drink the tea that makes you go. Life Change Tea. You may not need as much as Dad. You never know. GetTheTea.com. Log on to GetTheTea.com.
In 2019, the KGRA is closing down its archive vault to be reopened in another format in the near future. This year, you can get all the 2019 KGRA programming on demand on YouTube, Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, and Google Play. More ways for you to stay connected to your contact for alternative talk radio on the planet, KGRAradio.com.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now, live on KGRA Radio. If you want to find out more about this show and all the other KGRA radio shows, go to kgraradio.com. And taking us out of the break was Septembrio. If you want to find out more about Septembrio, go to Septembrio, spelled with a Y.com. All right, now I'm going to bring on a special guest, Ryan Sprague. Ryan has been on Paranormal Now before, but since then, it's a whole new world. So Ryan Sprague, welcome once again. How are you, brother?
Good, Alan. How are you doing, man? I'm so happy and honored to be here again, man. We've become really good friends and colleagues, and it's always great talking to you. So thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. And I'm going to shout it out because I don't know if you noticed it, but in honor of you being in Hawaii, you're still in Hawaii, right?
I am. Yeah.
Okay. I wore my Hawaiian shirt tonight.
Oh my gosh. I'm glad you wore it. I had it on yesterday, but I'm wearing it in spirit right now. The aloha spirit.
The aloha spirit. Right on. Well,
Yeah.
I've always loved Hawaiian music. Probably starting around like 16, 17 years old. I grew up near the beach. So, we had people that surfed and played ukuleles, even in New Jersey. With the Ka'au Crater Boys, Israel, obviously, probably the most famous Hawaiian artist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's really growing on me, man. I mean, I've been here for about a month now. For those who may not know, I do live mere blocks from you in New York City. But my job, like many, was shut down, and I was isolated for 100 days, man, and I was going nuts. So I had to get as far away from New York City as possible, and that landed me on Oahu. But the music's great, man.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. I feel you. I totally understand. Obviously, being in New York, we got hit hardest earlier, and New Yorkers, we took this seriously because I know people who work in hospitals, and COVID-19 is not a joke. It was extraordinarily stressful, emotionally draining on people because they see their colleagues get it. They'd see colleagues die. I think we had more than a dozen bus transit workers here in New York died from COVID. It happened so fast. And so the smart thing was to hunker down and not go anywhere. And if you were, a New Yorker, you would realize when you tried to rent a car to get out of the city, you couldn't do it because early on, everyone rented the cars, took them out, and then dropped them off, and they didn't come back to the city. Yeah. So if you didn't have a car, you could not get out. So we were really, not happy with that situation, but we, like everyone else, we did what we had to do, and still do. But recently we did get to New Jersey, and we went to the Pine Barrens, my old stomping grounds where I grew up, and to visit the Jersey Devil. But really, it was just a nice break to get some fresh air. Oh my God.
Yeah, it makes all the difference in the world, man. And I agree with you 100%. This COVID thing is no joke. All conspiracy theories and politics aside, people are dying at an alarming rate. And it's scary. When I got here to Hawaii, there were a dozen or so cases. And I was lucky when I got here. I was quarantined for 14 days. And the Hawaii state monitored my every move. And I appreciated that. They were doing the right thing.
Right.
And now that states are getting really confident and a bit prematurely, I believe, the cases in Hawaii have tripled in the past week. So it's not a joke, man. It's mere statistics and facts. And I just hope everyone will continue to just be considerate to those around you. That's what this really all comes down to.
Well,
just be smart.
I'm with you. I always feel like no matter, look, in retrospect, we will probably look at things and say, maybe that person was kind of right about this. But the point is that even if you think that this is some grand conspiracy, to control the sheeple, it's hurting our economy by not going along with it. So it's making it worse. So it's like you're getting angry at something and straining the situation. And so it's twofold as bad as it should have been.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that, like, let's just say some oligarchs were behind some aspect of this, right? And if that's what you believe, fine. But for the rest of us, we're trying to do what we need to do to keep going. So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I know people are passionate about this. This is a life or death situation, and it's hit every part of our lives, whether spiritually or economically or politically. And that's tough. Everyone has their own opinions. That's the beauty of a place like America. But, there comes a lot of responsibility with that as well. And consequence for things you say or do. And the consequences are clearly showing themselves right now with spikes again and cities shutting down. And look, man, I love Hawaii, but I would much rather be back where I belong. And that's in a Broadway theater where I work every day of my life. That is my lifeblood. That is how I pay my bills. Look, vacation's great and everything, but I want the country to reopen and everything be back to normal, or whatever this new normal is going to be. But hey, man, I'm glad to see you're still going, and so many passionate paranormal researchers and UFO people are still out there doing work. I think we all need that right now. It's a good distraction, but it's also, we're living in a new age when it comes to UFO disclosure, and it's been really exciting. So I'm focusing on that right now, personally.
It is. And I want to get your thought on that, because I've always been skeptical of any time someone says we're getting near disclosure, because I've heard that year after year after year. Now, granted, since 2017, things have indeed moved along quite quickly. There's no doubt about that. So the ball's been moved forward. That's true. Does that mean we are actually really close to actual disclosure?
For me, it comes down to, and I've spoken to other UFO researchers who would agree, we got it. It's been disclosed. I mean, our government here in America has admitted that UFOs exist, and that's more than we've ever gotten from them in the past 70 years. The game was to just deny it and make it go away. This is what Project Blue Book was. This was what all the follow-up, programs and committees were that followed Project Blue Book, was to wipe it clean, deny that anything out of the ordinary or unexplained is happening, and move on with our lives. But now we learned in 2017 of a secret Pentagon UFO program, and many advocates and individuals have moved that ball forward, like you said, and forced our government into a corner to finally admit UFOs exist. We don't know what they are, and we need to look more into this. And that gets into a whole other, issue that we have now with Senate bills now. I don't know if you want to get into that yet, but yeah, man, it's been an exciting time for sure.
Well, the bills that have been proposed recently, Marco Rubio, I get the sense that he does think something really is out of this world happening, but he's a politician, so he has to word things carefully. But I think that the fact that we have, it reminds me of the 1950s, where you could have, military personnel come out and speak openly about it before the real clampdown came to be. But this time I think that there is no clampdown, because we're in a different age. So the more and more political leaders you have come out, military personnel come out and say, this is real. This is something that we are studying. This is something we should pursue. Well, now it's on Twitter permanently, or it's on Facebook, or it's on YouTube. It's everywhere. You can't brush that aside and start a new chapter and just let people sort of forget about what happened.
Absolutely, man. We live in an age where nothing can be erased or moved to the side. It's always going to be there in some way, shape, or form now. And you look at someone like Rubio, who at one time, was an advocate of our president, and then wasn't, and this, that, and those are coming back to haunt him right now. His previous words, and that's a big issue for politicians. Is they want a legacy. And they want to be known for things, and they don't want to be known as a liar or being wrong on a certain policy. So while I may not agree with a lot of what Rubio thinks politically, I respect that he was willing to sort of take the charge on this and realize this is an issue that we have to look at from a military standpoint and as a country. If there's things in our skies we can't explain and they're a potential threat, that's an issue. Is it China? Is it Russia? Is it aliens? That's the real question. And, Rubio even said he hopes it's aliens. And I tend to agree with him. If this is an adversarial nation doing this, we're in a whole world of hurt and scary times, if that's true.
But I wonder if he actually already believes it's aliens. You know what I mean?
You have to wonder, Ellen. That goes for a lot of these people. Senator Harry Reid, who was the individual who sparked this whole thing and got the secret Pentagon UFO program going, or the former head of the program. Do they know more than they're actually letting on to the public? Probably. They've admitted such. So now it's a matter of, how do we get that out? How do we find that stuff out? And that's what I'm trying to do, and many other people are trying to do.
Yeah, wasn't it Tom Walker, the Republican from Texas? He wrote a letter last year. He wanted to know about what the heck is going on. So it's just, I think it was, or is it Mark Walker? I can't remember.
There were several. I know Mark Warner was one of the congressmen as well, who said, we got to look into this. And he got briefings from ATIP, the secret Pentagon UFO program, and these Navy pilots who saw these UFOs. Backdoor congressional top secret classified meetings. And look, they came out of those meetings white-faced and concerned. And that's huge. That is huge. And now it's moved up to the Senate, Congress, and possibly the president soon. So crazy times, man. Crazy times.
It is crazy. If you go back to, I think it was 1951, Frank Scully came out with his book that talked about the Aztec UFO. And at that time, they created this, conspiracy theory. Now, I'm not arguing for the case. I think it is a good case, but the conspiracy theory was that there were these oil con men involved in the case, and it totally discredited the Aztec UFO crash story as submitted by Frank Scully. It hurt Frank Scully's reputation for a time. But essentially, people stopped thinking about it completely. It was just out of the ufological history for decades. It even took Stanton Friedman a long time to kind of come around and to take that case seriously as well. But now you can't do that.
Yeah, I would have to agree, Ellen. I think time was on the side of the government for a really long time, if that makes sense. Yeah, with time, we forget, we move on. And the UFO topic wasn't on the minds of people for a long time. Right now, it's front and center. And our job now is to keep it that way and to not let it fade into obscurity or into bureaucracy and classified information. Let's get as much out there as we can with this opportunity. I think we're given an opportunity right now like we've never seen before. So let's root for these people and let's find out what's going on.
I agree wholeheartedly. And part of that work is what you do. And I think it is important work. I've always been fascinated with how people deal with an experience, a paranormal experience or a UFO encounter afterwards. It was something that just was so rarely covered. You'd have, bits and pieces in documentaries when they would interview someone, but really it was, what did you see? Which is important because that's what's moving the narrative along now in the mainstream media. What did these pilots see? But I want to know, and you have done the work, how did you feel? How did it change you afterwards? So you wrote your first book, Somewhere in the Skies. The second edition, what is different about it? Or is it just an expansion on the original work that you did?
Both. And that is a really good question. And it's a question I struggled with when I decided to do a second edition. I've said it before, the only time I've ever really bought a second edition of a book is if I was forced to in college, when it comes to whatever topic or class I was taking. But yeah, there has to be a reason for a second edition. And because of what I do in the UFO world, because I focus on individuals who've had the experiences and how it impacted their lives. Look, our lives go on. They keep going after these events. So I thought it was not only, interesting, but essential to follow up with all the individuals I brought forward in the 2016 edition. A lot of them had continued experiences, and that was one of the most surprising things for me.
Right.
A large amount of them, actually, which we can get into. But yes, it's an expansion for sure. I've added new chapters to the book with all new cases that have never been made public before by both military and civilian witnesses, multi-witnessed events, and honestly, some of the most powerful UFO cases I've personally come across, a few of which I'm actually personally investigating on a very serious level. So yeah, it's an expansion. It's updated, but it also gives us a better sense of the individuals I interviewed in the first book, and it continues their stories. So
Right.
yeah, I'm really excited.
That's a bit of an evolution, right? For you, you're taking on more work as far as investigating cases.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. When I first got into this, it was traveling the country and interviewing people. That was it. I decided when I wanted to tackle this and do a new edition, I wanted boots on the ground. I wanted to go out. I wanted to investigate some of these cases. And I'm currently doing that. In terms of the book, I mean, I personally, Alan, have grown so much between 2016 and 2020 when the first edition came out. So, I mean, I have a whole new outlook on all of this. We all do, since the 2017 New York Times article came out. It's like never before. UFOs are out there, and that changes everything. It changes the entire discussion. It changes the perception by those I interviewed. And I felt a responsibility to see how they grew.
Yeah. When you were first going down this more investigative road, now you had your own UFO experience. Were you comfortable sharing that with people, or did you kind of feel like you needed to just not talk about your own experience and just let others, share theirs?
It really depended. I mean, I denied my UFO event for a really long time. I believe we spoke about this previously because of that ridicule factor. And even for me as a UFO researcher, I thought if I told people about it, it would completely paint me as just another UFO nut.
It's ironic, but I get it. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I finally did embrace it, like many of the people in my book, that's when I felt I had to do that. I had to do that as a responsible researcher and get it out there, because eventually it would get out there somehow. And now, even my own father is corroborating the story, and he was there when it happened. And he has an interesting story to tell as well. I'm trying to get him on my own podcast, but it's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, man, I'm in a whole new world of thinking when it comes to UFOs, like many people out there right now, including all of the hundreds I interviewed in the book. So it's really interesting and fascinating to see how their beliefs have changed and how my own beliefs have changed. I am a character in this book as well. And that's what we do as writers, and as a playwright myself in New York City. I'm all about characters, and your character has to change after the most important event in their life. That's why you write a play. And I see many of these people who have seen UFOs as characters in a play. They have to change, and how did they change? And that's what the book really covers.
And you lead with your own story in the book. And what I was thinking was, when you go to talk to someone, no matter what the experience is, especially if it's something traumatic, when you've had a shared experience, it bridges, it creates a bridge between you and that other person. And I think that there's a sense of safety when someone else has had an akin experience.
Absolutely. My mentor, Peter Robbins, UFO researcher, he always taught me you have to have empathy when you're interviewing people who have seen these things, no matter what your own personal beliefs are, or preconceived notions even. Just empathize. Just feel for them. Clearly something happened to these people. I'm not saying it was aliens. I'm not saying it was angels, demons, a ghost, whatever. It impacted them. And like you said, some it traumatized them. Right. So I take that very seriously. Whatever happened to them, something happened, and they firmly believe that. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to record the story, and I'm going to use this platform that I've been given to give these people a voice, because, Navy UFO encounters are great and everything, but for every Navy UFO encounter, there's 100 people whose stories aren't out there and who are afraid to get their voices out there. So let's show them it's okay.
For everyone listening, the link to somewhereintheskies.com is in the chat for Facebook and YouTube if you want to check out his book, and your podcast as well, which is consistently ranked very high in our category, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, hey, we're doing something right, you and I.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good time to be in this world when it comes to the paranormal and UFOs. But the response to the podcast has been great. I'm going up to about 200 episodes now, and the support system I've had from the very beginning is just amazing. But that says more about the topic than I think it does my show or anyone's podcast. There's a craving and a sort of raw curiosity for this topic right now more than ever. And people are typing in UFOs or UAPs, as we're now calling them, into Google more now than ever. So let's ride that wave and let's embrace it and use that and get as many stories out there as we can.
Yeah. I am a wholehearted believer that UFO should remain the pop culture reference, not UAP.
Ooh, okay.
Simply because it transcends just unidentified flying object, and I think that it's a mainstay. Second, I just think it flows off the tongue more trippingly than does UAP. UFO just flows. So I say we stick with it.
Hey, man, I have UFO on the cover of my book, so I can't argue with you there.
True.
I understand the need and the necessity. Unidentified aerial phenomena sort of broadens it, which I think is great. We're not just talking about a solid object flying in the sky. So that's great. But, I always go back to UFO was coined by the U.S. Air Force in an attempt to downplay the severity of the high strangeness of this phenomena. So, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm open to UAP being the new thing, but I agree with you. I don't think it's ever going to leave. There's absolutely no way. It's in our lexicon and in our pop culture, and it's not going anywhere. So have no fear.
You said it yourself that it's the stories that you share on your podcast that get the most listens. And there's definitely something to that. In this new book, what is a new story that you found extremely compelling?
There was a case that came to me after the first edition came out. A gentleman had read the book, and he read a chapter that was all about orbs, the orb phenomenon specifically. And he said he had an experience like that. And I reached out to him, and, I take this role with everyone who comes to me with a story. I have them kind of fill out like a questionnaire. And if it hits every check mark on worth looking into, I'm going to pursue it. And as soon as he hit every check mark, I immediately called this guy and I said, we need to talk. We need to talk now. Yeah. So this case actually happened in 2019. So very, very recent, actually. And some of your listeners and viewers may actually have seen he recorded a video of this that was released in the New York Post. It was even on, I believe it was Paranormal Caught on Camera, TMZ. It was everywhere. So this dude's video blew up, but the story behind it was way more fascinating. The gentleman's name was Eric. He lives in Michigan, and he's an interesting guy. He's a gemologist, if I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah.
And he was out giving tours for Lake Superior of these really interesting lights or translucent sort of phenomena that occur in certain rocks on the beach. And he was out giving a tour one night, and 3 other people were there. They saw these weird lights over the water, and whatever, could be anything. And they started fading in and out sporadically, moving around, dancing in the sky. And that's when they were like, something's going on here. And all of a sudden, one of the lights literally shot from the water right above them on the beach and hovered above them, circled around them, and then shot back out to the water and remained stationary with the others. They watched this, Ellen, for like 40 minutes. It kept doing this. And to the point where two of the witnesses were like crouched behind rocks. They were terrified that, you know, they were either going to get attacked or something wrong was happening. But Eric was obsessed with what was going on, and he wanted to keep, you know, trying to get its attention or communicate with whatever these lights were. The people on his tour thought differently, and they demanded that he bring them back to their cars and they go home. After he brought them back, he raced back to where this happened. Mm-hmm. Lights were still there. And he started shining his headlights at these orbs over the water. And again, one of them shot right above his car, hovered, went back out. Now you can see the initial part of this entire sighting in a video. I'll try to get you a link for that actually when we're done. But fascinating case. We know that there was a ship out on the water at the time, and these lights were hovering right above it. So both Eric and I have gotten in touch with the people that were on that ship that night, and they had some really interesting stuff to say. And I should have some developments on that soon. But it's an ongoing case, and it impacted Eric and the other witnesses who I've also spoken to. Yep. And yeah, it's amazing.
All right. Well, we're going to go to break, and we're going to continue with so many of these other fascinating stories with Ryan. And I am curious, what is the emotional impact? Because, there are people who have, PTSD because of so many experiences that don't fit into their paradigm. And, our minds, we are raised in certain environments, exposed to certain things. And so when something just so far out happens, I know for some, the brain just freezes and shuts down, which probably explains why people don't grab their cameras right away to capture something, because they're just so lost in the moment. In a world where we're not in the moment enough, these instances bring people to live and be heightened awareness in the moment, which I think is fascinating, because one wonders, are they trying to get us to feel something and to look towards something beyond the veil? Maybe, I'm not sure. Ryan, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a documentary called Witness of Another World on Amazon Prime, and Jack Valet, who rarely does documentaries, is involved in this. And of course, he always poses that question, right? Like, what are these things? Where are they nudging us? Where are they coming from? But what are they doing to us? And there's that emotional aspect. So we'll find out more about that when we come back on the other side with Ryan Sprague. Stay tuned. This is Alan B. Smith on KGRA Radio, live Saturday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hang in there. We will be right back.
Lost in a bad way, cost me my family. Chaos around me, can't hear my heart say, hey, that's the wrong way. Hey, that's the wrong way. Hey, that's the wrong way. That's the wrong.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Are you still at it?
Yeah, I need more speed.
This baby's fast.
My dad's fast. He's scary fast.
You really think you could beat him?
Yeah, because I drink more tea than he does.
Yeah, right.
Pal, it's the tea that makes you go. Oh. Hey, Dad.
Kiddo, you have to drink a lot more tea to be faster than me.
Drink the tea that makes you go. Life Change Tea. You may not need as much as Dad. You never know. GetTheTea.com. Log on to GetTheTea.com.
In 2019, the KGRA is closing down its archive vault to be reopened in another format in the near future. This year, you can get all the 2019 KGRA programming on demand on YouTube, Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, and Google Play. More ways for you to stay connected to your contact for alternative talk radio on the planet. KGRAradio.com.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith. Hanging with me tonight is Ryan Sprague, author of Somewhere in the Skies. And yeah, we are going to be lost somewhere in the skies tonight. If you have questions for Ryan, you can call in during the last half an hour. We'll open up the phone lines. And that phone number is 85 KGRA Live, the Paranormal Radio app hotline, 85 KGRA Live, or 855-472-5483. So Ryan, what does happen to people internally after these encounters?
A lot, Ellen. I mean, prime example, Witness to Another World, the film that you brought up before the commercial break there, is by far the best UFO documentary I have ever seen, period. And that's for one reason. It focused on the experiencer rather than the experience itself. And it hit me personally like never before. It's a beautiful film. I highly suggest people check it out. And I actually talk to the filmmaker, Alan Stevelman, almost on a daily or weekly basis now because I was so just in love with his film. Yeah. And, he tells me that he checks in with the guy in the film almost on a daily basis. Is anything going on? What's new? This, that. And for those who don't know, the gentleman in the film had a close encounter experience, and it actually brought his entire life full circle and changed his life completely. And it's beautiful. And that's something that I'm trying to do as well with my work.
Right. Yeah, we started watching it today. We're about 3/4 of the way through. And I'm with you. It's a really great film. Just one part at the beginning during the narration or voiceover where he says that it's a little hyperbolic, where he says no one looks for the transcendent anymore. And I think what he meant was modern society in general is too distracted. And they're not seeking, spiritual. But it was like, wait, what do you mean no one's like, I'm looking? There's a lot of people looking in the paranormal world. And I think that's a big part of what all of this is that are seeking, are searching.
I'd have to agree, man. I think this is we've moved away from nuts and bolts ufology, as it were, into a more existential question. And that's where I love to be, and that's where that's where you and I just connect dots constantly with one another. And yeah, man, these events, they change people in so many ways. I mean, I could go through a whole laundry list. But end of the day, a UFO event, no matter how small it is, from a light in the sky up to a claimed close encounter or abduction experience, it's going to change somebody somehow. And I think with enough of that change, enough of that transcendence, we're going to find answers that we probably weren't looking for before, and answers that we never expected. And that's what excites me most. Is I'm not looking to prove aliens exist and that's what's visiting our planet and that's what UFOs are. I'm out to figure out what people are seeing in the sky, but also what does it do to them? What does it say about us as human beings? And what does it say about us as as a planet? I mean, it's astounding how we all connect on a daily basis now with people from all over the world. We've been given this power of the internet. So let's use it to communicate and not to disparage one another, and to work together to find answers to this profound question of what's in our skies.
Why is it traumatic for people?
I think for a lot of these people, like you mentioned, cognitive behavior, I think, has a lot to do with it. Our brain, and you said this earlier, it tends to filter things, and it if it's not, something we understand, throws it away. And that's what often happens with these UFO events. As people are seeing it, they can't relate it to anything else they've ever experienced, myself included, when I was 12 years old. And you kind of just either deny it or your brain just blacks it out. And that was a pattern I found with not every person in my book, but a large majority, is this idea of almost an amnesia after their experience, and or acting abnormally afterwards,
right?
Which is really, really weird if you think about it, the way we react to these things, where someone sees a gray alien outside their window coming towards them, and instead of, grabbing a gun, calling the cops, they lay back down into bed and they go to sleep. Like, what is that, Ellen? I can't tell you, but it's something we have to look further into, because it's happening at a staggering amount with these people.
It is happening with a staggering amount. Have you talked to anybody who has had a UFO encounter that thoroughly believes that they're messaging something to them to learn something?
Absolutely. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to who have claimed that they were given messages, mostly telekinetic, by whatever intelligence they believe was behind what they experienced. Again, I'm not just saying aliens. And yeah, the messages always seem to have some sort of running theme, and that has to do with impending danger or threats to our planet. And look, we've been dealing with that since the contactee movements of the 50s,
Sure.
the 60s. It took on a sort of darker, I'd say, mask in the 80s and 90s with these really, scary stories of Fire in the Sky and Whitley Strieber and everything. But even those guys, some of them claimed that they were given messages that, get your act together, Earth. Like, we know what you guys are doing. We're watching you. We've been watching you since the dawn of time. And what are you doing? I think that's the biggest question, is what are you doing?
Yeah, but how much of that is just us fulfilling our own, desires for a better world for ourselves, and that we're just projecting these things into our own minds, and that there really isn't an ET or intradimensional presence?
Or is it both? That's a really good question, because I think a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists who have looked into the abduction phenomenon have said the same thing. These UFOs, these aliens, they represent an aspiration of what we could be and what we want to be, whether that's an advanced civilization or a peaceful civilization, or let's even look at 50s, 60s, when we were starting our space race. This is when the idea of the alien really became prominent and attached to UFOs, because we're trying to reach the stars. We're trying to explore our universe. And what better way than to say, these UFOs we're seeing on Earth, they could possibly be an extraterrestrial civilization.
Yeah.
So we have to get out there and explore that. So I do think you're right. I think there is a lot of our own, our brains and our societies and cultures have a lot more to do with it than just a message being imparted to us. And I do think it's kind of a mixture of both, and it's a case-to-case basis.
Well, that does not make it easy, though.
No one ever said ufology was going to be easy. And, maybe
Yeah.
I thought so when I first started, man. But hey, look, we're no closer to answers now than we have been. And who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
Well,
next.
psychologically, maybe that is what explains all of those researchers who hold steadfast to the nuts and bolts research approach, because maybe that they have a really hard time psychologically juggling all of these different aspects or potential aspects of the phenomena, because if you're hunting, right, you go to the woods and you know you're looking for a bird, a thing. It's a material thing. You're looking for signs of it. You're listening for sounds. When you study how to hunt a deer, everything's tangible.
Yeah.
And they want that, I think, to be the same for UFO hunting, for the research, the investigation. I want it to be able to, here's an outline. This is what we should be looking for. And I can't think about psychology, when you're, I mean, maybe for some people, but if you're hunting a deer, are you thinking about, your existential existence in that moment? Or are you thinking about, I'm hunting for food, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. Expectation has a lot to do with how we perceive these things.
True.
If you're looking for the deer, you're going to find the deer, or you're going to think every little movement in a bush is a deer. So I have to agree with you. I think, again, we bring so much more to this dance than we think we do. And I think we do create, in some ways, or manifest the phenomenon that's at play. That's a whole other conversation. But I do agree with you. I think human beings are, our nature is to be defensive. So if you're out hunting and a deer is out there, you are on the offensive trying to hunt it. But at the same time, you don't want that thing coming up and stampeding on you at the same time. So when it comes to UFOs, I think it's in our inherent nature to, whatever the phenomenon is in the sky, to view it as a potential threat. And that's scary for a lot of people. Is first, they can't process what they're seeing. And second, it's not some space brother coming to impart a message. It's something that you don't recognize and is going to be a threat somehow, a danger somehow. And we're seeing that play out in the mainstream media now when it comes to UFOs. The military's looking at it. The Senate Intelligence Committee is looking at it as a potential threat. And I have to agree with them. If you don't know what it is, it's going to be a potential threat, no matter what. So, look at it that way.
So that's not wrong, right?
No, not at all. No, I think, and again, we're not dealing with one phenomenon here. Maybe one is a potential threat, but one isn't. But we don't know enough to make that decision now. So I think as human beings, we have to continue to be on guard and not, believe every single person when they say that these aliens are here to save us or to help us, because we don't know that. And if someone does tell you that, run for the hills. That's what I said.
I agree. And if anybody watching is seeing me fidgeting around, I spilled coffee, and
oh no,
I'm like wiping it up off of myself right now. I'm an addict. My name is Alan, and I'm addicted to coffee.
The first step is acceptance.
Exactly. Yes, but I do have experience with recovery and with addiction, and so I can relate to the people coming out of the trauma of these situations. And I've talked to Kathleen Martin about this. You need to find other people that you can talk to and share that experience with, to validate you. But with addiction, it's something that exactly what happened, right? I experienced this, and this. But with this, it's so bizarre. It's so out there. I don't even know how you begin a sort of healing process, or where that conversation is supposed to begin, because you don't have psychologists, outside of those of old like John Mack. There's no one really leading the fore in research from a strictly psychological and scientific point of view to help people deal with this. What do you suggest to people, anyone who's listening right now who may have had an experience that was disturbing for them?
You bring up a good point. A lot of the people who we could depend on, or that we respected in the psychological field who did look at this, have passed on. I mean, you look at someone like John Mack or Bud Hopkins, and we've lost a lot of them, which is very unfortunate, because I think these guys were pioneering something that we need to continue to study. I have my own personal beliefs about alien abduction, but the facts speak for themselves. The amount of people speak for themselves that have come forward with these claims, and I'm not going to take that away from them. Something happened to them, and it was very traumatic. So what do? You're right. I mean, do you go to a support group? Yeah, that's definitely an option. And I know you and I have had this discussion in the past. when it comes to experiencer support groups, it's hard because where is that line between helping, validating, and enabling? And that's a problem.
I think structure is really important as well, because like in a certain 12-step recovery program, it began with two people sitting down, having a conversation until they were both like sobered up, and that's how it started. Having that conversation, that's the foundation. But if you don't have an outline and for lack of a better word, steps to work through it, I was involved once sort of as a guest with someone else in a group setting that was a support group, and it had no structure. And so initially there was that sense of, oh my gosh, I'm not alone, this feels good. But as I was like watching this going on, I was thinking there are some, and we discussed afterwards that there are some unhealthy aspects to this, because there's a free form here. So one person might say something that well intended is inappropriate and can hurt the feelings of another person or undermine what that other person is feeling or experienced. So I think, and I'm kicking the ball to you, man. I think that you should, with the work you've done, maybe talk to Kathleen Martin and see if maybe you guys can put something together out there, at least preliminarily, to help people. Because I've talked to Ray Hernandez about this. Some people out there might be mentally disturbed. And how do you know, right, when it's someone who had an actual experience and someone who is mentally disturbed? And I think there needs to be a way to work through that and find out. In your book, in your research, did you talk to anybody and you decided to not include it in your work because of that?
That's a really good question. Well, I will say I did include Kathleen Martin. She has a healthy part in the book, actually, amount of suggestions and input relating to exactly what you said. How do we move forward with this? And I think she's doing some of the most amazing work in finding patterns and statistics and working with experiencers. So I have to give her all the credit in the world. She's kind of a one-woman army at this point when it comes to this phenomenon. Of course, we have Yvonne Smith, Michael Austin. We have several others who are looking into the experiencer phenomenon. One of which is a brand new one that I bring forward in the book, a preserver of stories, as it were. And her name is N.K. Kranda. I don't think she'd have any issue with me saying that. She's one of the most important people right now in the UFO field looking at the experiencer phenomenon. So I highly suggest people check them out. As for things I didn't include in the book, it really was a case-to-case basis, Alan. I mean, I had people come to me days before publication in the first volume that said, I don't want to be in this anymore. And I legally had to take it out. And that happened once in the new version as well. So yeah, there's always that chance that an individual will no longer want to make their name known out there and talk about this stuff. And I don't blame them for that. I will never blame them for that. And anonymous people as well, that's completely up to them. But in terms of content, the only things I really didn't include in the book were claims I could not substantiate. And that takes on many, many different forms. So I'm going to be honest with you, there really wasn't much that I did not include in the book. This new version is a book's worth of new material, almost 70,000 new words. So all I did was take what I couldn't put in the first volume and put it into the new one. So I hope that answers your question, but if not, I'd be happy to clarify. Yeah.
No, that's fine. I haven't finished the new second edition. I think you sent it to me about less than a week ago. So life happened, so I haven't finished it. For transparency's sake. But it was funny. Actually, I started reading this book, Some of this guys, about 2 weeks ago. I started rereading it.
Awesome.
And I saw your post about the second edition. So I put this down. Started reading the other one. But And I love the cover art, by the way. It's fantastic.
Thank you. That was done completely by my publishers. I don't know who the exact artist is, and I would absolutely love to give them credit, but I was blown away when I saw it. It embodies everything I wanted in the book, and for me personally, on my own journey to find answers. And that's beyondthefraypublishing.com, which is co-run by Shannon LeGros and Jeff over at Beyond the Fray Publishing. They do amazing work, and I can't tell you, they are a dream team. And we put this book together. I won't even tell you in such a small amount of time. And I actually didn't talk about it at all. I didn't, hype it up. I didn't really announce it early because I just wanted to make it as good as I possibly could and drop it out there. So yeah.
Weren't you teasing something was coming?
The day before I did, because
I thought I saw something. Yeah.
Look, I am a former hype guy. I was an athlete. I love cheering and sort of teasing things and whatnot. But I've learned in my later years and in my UFO research is you can't make any promises in this world any longer. We live in uncertain times, and especially with UFOs. So I decided to just drop it when I can, and when I have something to say, let the work stand for itself. And I have a lot of other authors and researchers to thank for teaching me that. Yeah.
Well, I know that you look to Peter Robbins for advice, and he's your mentor. How, when you're listening to those who have come before and have more wisdom, what is it that you garner from them that is unique, that maybe someone who's new to the field isn't aware of, just doesn't think about?
For me, it really comes down to the topic we're studying. I mean, you and I and your listeners, we can talk UFOs for hours upon hours, and it's like every day, and we take it seriously.
Yeah.
And there's very little scoffing or laughing or anything. But I try to keep in mind when I'm talking to people out in public about this, you got to be careful. People lose jobs and reputations over this sort of thing. Even in today's post New York Times article world, it's still not that accepted in the mainstream.
Right.
Let's be honest, the mainstream, they are not thinking about UFOs from day to day. They're thinking of, how do I not die from a pandemic? How do I pay my next bill? And, even what's on TV tonight, let's be completely honest. So I try to keep that in mind, is to remember what it is I'm studying and how weird and awkward and scary and beautiful and profound it can actually be. So I try to keep that in mind when I'm interviewing people, and I never make light of the situation unless the situation calls for it. And I also have learned that don't be afraid to be wrong. I mean, we are wrong constantly when it comes to these topics, and none of us are experts. And don't be afraid to change your mind. That was the big one for me. I think a lot of people, when they believe something, like, there is no changing someone's mind. So for me, I've learned a lot from 2016 to 2020 with these books. You're going to see a whole different outlook from me as the author, and my thoughts and opinions on certain things that I covered and that is out there. So, I think don't be afraid to change your mind is the biggest one I took away from my mentors. And I continue to live that every day.
I think that's important. I think oftentimes when we're younger, we're afraid to be seen as wrong. But when you get older, you just realize that's life. And sometimes being wrong is one of the best things that can happen to you. Even if the heat comes down, you're forged a better person on the other side.
Absolutely. I mean, I had a conversation with a colleague 2 days ago where we got into a heated argument on Twitter, as you do, because that's the only reason for Twitter nowadays. Look, I had to admit to this guy that I was wrong. And that's not easy for anyone, especially when you're given such a limited amount of space on a social platform to do it. But we talked it out, and I just had to throw up the white flag and say, you're right. And Ellen, I can't tell you how good it felt to admit it and B, to realize I hadn't lost a friend. I hadn't lost a colleague over some stupid argument on a website. So I think that's the big thing, man. Yeah, don't be afraid to be wrong and admit your mistakes and grow from it.
Yeah, and I feel the same way about Twitter. I have a very mixed relationship with it. But I don't engage anymore with arguments. So if I have something to say about something, I'll say it, and then I'll just kind of let it be. I try now to just hang out with people who I enjoy, tweeting with, and have more fun on there. Same thing with Facebook. And it really does bother me that, especially people in our field, we are exploring some really out there strange stuff. And so for us to be bickering over differences that are paranormal, supernatural, in origin seems just really strange. It gets very, lack of a better word, religiously dogmatic, right? Where you kind of just dig your heels in and that's it. This is what I believe. I'm right and you're wrong, which is, I guess it's human nature, because it seems to me that most of us who are open to the paranormal, tend to do so because when we were younger, we had open minds, but something happens, something changes along the way. And for those that you've interviewed, how have they changed over time since those experiences? Like, can you give us maybe one person as an example?
Yeah, I mean, there is one individual in particular that I can think of who is a multi-abductee. He claims to have been abducted by aliens from childhood up until today. And what I found really interesting about him is the experiences started very, I don't want to use the wrong words here or put words in his mouth, but peaceful, profound, positive even.
Yeah.
And as time went on, and as he got older and possibly more resistant to having the experiences, they took on a whole different form. Brutal would be a good word to use. Negative, traumatic, and it was actually really hard to follow up with this individual because he thought about it for a while. He first said no. And I didn't prod him much, but I said, "Oh, I'm just curious why." And he said, "I don't want to talk about this in my life anymore." And this is a guy who's written like 3 books about his experiences. And that really spoke to me. I'm like, wow, something major must have happened. And when he admitted that the experiences took a dark turn, I don't know, man. It's scary to think that way, that something that once changed him in a good way is now not so much. But
so are the experiences themselves brutal, or he is a more brutal person?
I don't think it's him. I mean, he straight up said he's waking up from experiences with, and I put this in the book, so I will talk about it, with a bloody handprint on his pillowcase, none of which came from his wife, anyone in his family, he himself. He had the liquid or the blood tested, and I don't know what to make of it. It wasn't from anyone in his family, I can tell you that much. So either someone's playing a cruel trick on this guy, or his experiences have taken a turn for the worse, or something completely separate from everything he experienced is happening. We can't rule that out either. So many people who have one experience in one realm of the weird or the strange start having others in other doors or veils being unlocked or peeked through. So yeah, that one really struck me.
That's really, that could be really dark. I mean, if you were, a detective, your first inclination was this guy went out and did something. Maybe he blacked out, but somebody out there got hurt because of him. But like, if you take into account particular cases of cattle mutilation, where blood is gone and there's no sign of it, perhaps maybe he's involved in some other experiment where someone isn't necessarily being hurt. I don't know. I would hope to think that. So we're going to open up the Paranormal Radio app hotline. If you want to call in, that number is 855-472-5483. And we are now going to bring on our first caller, Ron from Minnesota. You are on the air.
Hello, Alan, and thank you for a great show. Eric Hartwig kind of gave up the good, told me to tell you that the first thing when I'd say great show. But anyway,
thanks, Ron.
great guest tonight with Carole and Ryan. Ryan, I had a question for you, but Alan, you can also answer some of this as well. Mm-hmm. When you guys get a story, whether it be paranormal or if it be UFO, how do you validate it, or what they say, vet? You know, how do you do the research with everything? Obviously, you can't go to the site anymore at this point. Mm-hmm. You can't be out there in person to go visit somebody at this point. How do you actually do the research when the lamestream media, I'll say, isn't really very reliable on getting you the actual sources? Mm-hmm. How do you actually do the research and verify your story aside from a phone call? Or do they send you a notarized letter saying, hey, this is a real statement? And how would they do that if the office is closed? They can't get it notarized, you know? Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good question. For me personally, as a researcher, whenever someone reaches out to me, my first question is, who else was there? Who else experienced it? Do you have video evidence? Do you have photographs? So yeah, those are the easy ones to try to validate, first and foremost. And for me, it does come down to corroborating witnesses very, very often. And a lot of these cases do have other individuals who can vouch for this individual that this happened. So that would be the big one for me personally, is other people who may have been there or witnessed this. But like I said, I also go down a checklist personally of questions, and kind of like a vetting process, as you termed it, of, time, date, this, that. And then I start going with, okay, who can I reach out to in this town? Maybe law enforcement, maybe the FAA. And if they can say that something was either, on radar that night or not in a flight pattern that night, if we're talking about a UFO case, then that I can work from there. So yeah, there's a lot of different avenues to take, and it does vary from case to case. So it is hard in this world we're living in right now, I'll tell you that. Like I mentioned earlier in the interview, I'm dying to get out and investigate this Michigan case with the lights over the water, multi-witness, but I can't. So I do have to rely on the internet and Skype or whatever system you use to do that, to communicate with people. So, it's tough. It's tough for sure.
I can't
speak for your hard work.
Yeah, I can't speak to it in the same way, Ron, since Ryan is a writer and he does research specifically on cases and interviews people for that purpose. But I can say, and this may sound controversial to some people out there, they may not like it, but oftentimes people will email me or send me comments, right? And I actually, early on, about like a year and a half, 2 years ago, when I first started communicating with Ryan, I asked him about this. But for me, I have to read into someone's language. Sometimes you have to kind of do your best to intuit whether somebody is a truth teller, or if maybe something isn't quite right, psychologically. And I'm not a judge, but for the integrity of bringing on certain guests, you do have to sort of do your best to vet. And the first stage of that is reading how they write and what they're saying. Second, like Ryan was saying, I got an email today from someone, an abductee, and they had sent me an email earlier. I had not responded to it yet. They followed up and said, just in case, so-and-so, who I know, referred me to you, just so that you know that I'm, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, oh, okay. That makes me feel a little bit better. So it does, like, having an extra source, I think, gives at least a little bit more credibility to whomever that is yet you and Ryan Case would be writing about, or for me that I would bring onto the show.
Yeah, and Ron, I'd like to add too, it's not easy. I mean, I would like to think at this point in my research, after interviewing hundreds and hundreds of people, that I would have good intuition or a gut feeling if someone was lying to me or not. But hey, man, look, anyone can be fooled. And like we mentioned earlier, you have to be willing to admit if you're wrong or if you've been taken for a ride. And I have been, trust me. I've been lied to. I've been fooled. I've been, everything. And at this point, and you do start to infuse that into your passion of trying to find the truth. So yeah, I agree with you, Alan. You know, if someone comes to me with a case, I will start sharing it with other researchers. Have they heard about it before? Has this story been around for a while and this person is just hijacking it even? We see that a lot, actually, where someone comes to me with something, a specific thing, and I just start typing certain words they used into a document, and I see that it was on a blog 30 years ago or whatnot, and they just made it their own, changed the date, changed the location.
Yep.
So, hey, the internet, there's a lot bad with it, man, but it can also really help us as researchers too, to find those things with the, with the snap of a finger. So, yeah, I think, again, it comes down to it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Great show again, Alan, and I'll let you guys get back to some other callers. And thank you again, and we'll see you next week.
All right, Ron, thanks so much for calling in.
Bye now.
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah, so it is slippery, right? I mean, you don't know always if you're going to be taken or not, and there's no absolute way or path to know for certain whether someone is telling the truth or not, other than tertiary evidence or just getting to know someone. So of all the people that are included in your second edition of your book, who did you find the most credible? I guess you shouldn't probably pit one against the other, right? But was there a case that had more evidence to substantiate the claim?
Yes, if you consider official documents by the Department of Defense credible, Ellen, yes. I have a brand new chapter in the book with the first individual to sight, to track, and to intercept the now famous Tic Tac UFO event. Radar operator Kevin Day. He is one of the most upstanding individuals I've ever come across. And I'll tell you this, after spending hours talking to him and parceling through this case, the Nimitz UFO encounter, this thing changed this man dramatically. So that was a huge emotional journey for both he and I. And it's probably the most powerful addition to the book, I would say, other than a few other cases. But yeah, man, this isn't just about a little blurry white thing in a video that we've been shown. There are so many people who saw this, and it impacted them in many different ways. And Kevin is just one of them. But that chapter really shook me and showed me how even our Navy can be so changed by these events that for some, it only lasted a couple seconds, for others, a few minutes, but it changes the rest of their lives. And that goes for our Navy as well.
Yeah. All right. So everyone listening, if you're just tuning in, I'm speaking with Ryan Sprague, author of Somewhere in the Skies, and I'm putting his link to his website in the chat room right now on Facebook and on YouTube. So for those of you who are listening on the KGRA app or online through the website, yes, we are now, we have a number of shows that are streaming with video content as well. So I can sit here and see Ryan, which is so nice. And he's out there in Hawaii.
I know. Isn't it? It's just crazy where we are now in the world. And who would have thought all of our communication would become this now?
Exactly. Right.
All of it. Yeah.
All right. Well, and moving forward, if you want to find out more, just go to paranormalnow.net or go to kgrradio.com. And for show updates, follow me on Twitter at paranormal_now. And on Twitter, where should people follow you, Ryan?
They can find me at Somewhere Skies on Twitter. I'm on Instagram at Somewhere Skies Pod. And thank you for putting the website. I have a brand new website.
It looks good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was designed by an individual named Mike Rezel. So if you're looking for a website, hit this guy up. Oh my God, man, I was blown away. He did Jacques Vallée's website. So there's a shining accreditation right there. So yeah.
Yeah. If he swept Jacques Vallée's kitchen, that would still be an honor. Like, that's
I want that room. Yeah.
All right. So the Paranormal app radio lines are open. That number is 85 KGRA live, 855-472-5483 to call in and ask Ryan your questions. So Ryan, earlier I was talking to Carole Carle, and I sort of posed this idea that if there was a parallel, if we could create a parallel to MUFON that actually studies the paranormal, cryptids, ghosts, more metaphysical aspects of these occurrences. MUFON has opened up the dialogue to include these other topics a little more now than they have in the past. At the contention of some others, who, like we said earlier, are more nuts and bolts people. Mm-hmm. But at least what MUFON does is that, they have a framework and they have a way to investigate, right? They have a formula. Yeah. Do you think that the paranormal world should do something like this as well? Create a sort of universal formula, a nonprofit where people studying different aspects can all feed in information in a way that could be studied in an organized fashion?
Absolutely. I mean, it's so funny you say that. I've never really even thought about that. MUFON is sort of the only volunteer-based international organization doing something like that. And you're right. They've sort of harnessed their investigation skills and what have you, manual, I guess, for decades and decades. So time is on their side in terms of efficiency and everything. I think that would be an amazing idea if we had a paranormal society or collective that did the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's hard because, now that I'm thinking about it, there's MUFON, there's a few other, UFO organizations. But when it comes to the paranormal, we're talking hundreds of thousands of paranormal groups that will come to your house and investigate and stuff like that. So mm-hmm. I think that's interesting that in the paranormal, which is so much more broad than UFOs, sure. Mm-hmm. We have such a ragtag sort of mentality of like anyone could be a paranormal investigator. Mm-hmm. Well, hey, anyone could be a UFO investigator too. So yeah, that's a really amazing thing, and I think that should happen. And I'd be a huge advocate of that. Look, man, I'm the first to say, I think ghosts, I think Bigfoot, I think UFOs. We've talked about this. There is some sort of connection mm-hmm. between all of it. And a new book I'm working on, if I may say, is broaching those topics. How do we bring these communities together? And how do we find answers together? Let's stop, having these different camps and let's just throw stuff at the wall and see what happens. So I think that's an amazing idea. And if you are going to spearhead that, I am in your corner, man. And I am a cheerleader and I am all for it.
I appreciate the vote of confidence. I don't know if I can handle that. But
okay.
I think obviously that would be a team effort. You'd have to get a collective of people to work together to really build a structure like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and our own government has looked into these things too. Sure. If we're talking, there's MUFON, civilian run, and then there's ATIP, Pentagon run. That's great. We know for a fact that our own government and militaries have looked at all different paranormal phenomena throughout the years in official capacities, whether it's, psychokinetic powers or ghosts or premonitions or remote viewing. It's happened. So yeah, let's take that. So many MUFON people were former government and military. So let's find those people who may have been part of these official programs and start bringing in the volunteers, and let's get an army out there to attack this stuff. Because like I said, I think UFOs have a lot more to do with all the other stuff than we give it credit for. And we're only just beginning. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, I wonder if these experiences and these encounters as we were saying earlier, might be nudging us to think bigger and so forth. But maybe the reason that they're so enigmatic is because they want us to research and investigate these more metaphysical adjacent happenings, right? Because if they were just physical beings from Zeta Reticuli that were coming here and just doing scientific research, that doesn't explain the most bizarre aspects of these encounters. And they're very personal in nature as well.
Yeah, I do think, and whenever I get the question, when is disclosure happening? Do you think disclosure is ever going to happen? I tell them, from the hundreds of people in my book and the thousands around the world who've come forward, disclosure's already happened for them. I mean, they had their own personal disclosure. They've peeked beyond the veil. They've touched a ghost. They've seen a ghost. They've touched a UFO. They've been abducted by aliens. They've seen a Bigfoot. The list just goes on and on, Alan. That's disclosure. And I think it happens one person at a time. And the more people that start talking about it and start making it normal, I think the more answers we're going to find. And I don't think we're ever going to get that one disclosure, boom, the governments of the world come together and say aliens exist, or the supernatural is real, this, that. I really think that it happens person to person, and maybe that's what these phenomena want. I think we're a lot more powerful as individuals than we are as a group at some, in some ways. So, let's take each individual and start building the cases and show our governments, like, if you do know anything about this, tell us. We're ready. We want to have this conversation with you. You work for us. Remember that, government. You work for us.
Yeah. I think the government sometimes thinks of themselves as a parent, or we know what's best for you, and it's the just because response that you would get from your mom or dad. But what? Just because. Just trust us.
Their word is bond. Yes.
Right. Now, there have been claims, right, of recovered material from out of this world craft. What is your take on that? Because there was testing done on a metallic piece that came. It was layered, right? But the initial testing didn't say that it was necessarily anything out of the ordinary. So what material are they referring to? Because I think this was a piece that Linda Moulton Howe had purchased for like $60,000 or something.
Yeah.
Or sold for $60,000. It was passed to her from Art Bell. But okay, so then what material are we talking about that's so fantastic?
Well, also in Linda's defense, I don't follow her work too closely, but selling that material, you have to keep in mind she's had this thing tested by some of the most preeminent scientists out there, and she's put far more than $60,000 of her own money into doing that. So if anything, this was just to make money back from all these failed attempts by scientists to figure out what it was she had.
Sure.
I do believe that To the Stars Academy and the Army, we're learning now, are in possession of that certain material, and they're probably going to do their own testing, because all the tests that could be done on that particular material have not been done ever before. So now that we have the Army's resources to do that, and by we, I mean To the Stars Academy, which I'm not a member of, so I guess I'm not really a we. But that being said, they're going to really up the ante when it comes to testing that particular material.
Yeah.
I do know for a fact that they have other materials in their possession as well. And I've studied anomalous materials myself, having to do with the Roswell wreckage. And we only had, a few tests done, Ellen, and I can't even disclose how much money that cost. But let's just say I'd have to take out 50 Harvard loans to cover something like that.
Yeah.
We're learning now in the New York Times that the government may be in possession of off-world vehicles or wreckage from possible extraterrestrial craft. I cannot pretend to know what they mean by that.
Sure.
All I know is The Army is looking at very anomalous materials right now, and they are coming up just like many of the independent scientists are with very interesting findings. I can't pretend to know all of those findings, but I have been privy to some of them. And all I can say is be ready. Be ready. The talk about wreckage and materials has only just begun. And we have a long way to go, and it's a gradual process. But I think the outcome eventually is going to it's going to change the world. And whether that's for the better or not is up to the Army.
Right. Well, so what's your inclination? When do you think that this would happen?
I can't honestly tell you. Look, when we're talking about government, you know as well as I do, it could take decades. And that's the problem. Everyone wants everything now. You know, when I first learned about To the Stars Academy and what they were doing, they were going to build a UFO. They were going to crack the mystery of anti-gravity. They were going to disclose UFOs to the world. And my first thing was, I want to know what those materials are that you're in possession of. Tell me if they're alien or not. And that's not how these things work. We've gotten some really interesting stuff from them already, To the Stars Academy, from the Navy, from the Army, and now the Senate Intelligence Committee is getting in the game and creating a UFO task force, which is just like, what world are we living in now?
Exactly.
2020 couldn't get any weirder, man.
Well, I mean, people do think that maybe this is just going to be Project Blue Book 2.0. Possibly. I kind of doubt that since they've already, run that line before with us and we didn't buy it. And now you have just so many public figures and politicians and military personnel that are out in the open about this. I don't think you can do a Project Blue Book 2.0. I don't know. I think that this has to be serious. That's my intuition about it. Ryan, what do you want people to take away from your book?
I want people to just keep in mind that everything going on in the mainstream media right now when it comes to Navy UFO videos and Senate Intelligence Committee bills and UFO task force, whatever it is. Yes, UFOs are in the mainstream now like never before. That's amazing. We're getting stunning military encounters with UFOs, which ups the legitimacy and the credibility. But I want people to remember that military UFO encounters, of which some I cover in my book, are 1% of the phenomenon happening, Alan. There are so many people in all walks of life, all over the world, in every belief system you can possibly think of, culture, society, experiencing these phenomena at an alarming rate. And by alarming, I don't necessarily mean bad, but I think we need to remember that we have a voice in this. We have a say in how we move forward with the conversation, with the topic, and with the eventual outcome. So with the book, I just want people to read these stories. I gave a voice to these people for a reason. As a UFO researcher who's been doing this for a long time, these are the cases I think we have to look at and be like, oh my gosh, my sister had an encounter. My dentist had an encounter. This police officer had an encounter. That says something. So don't just take what the government and the military say as the final word on all of this, because we do have a say in this. The government works for us, and we deserve to know what's going on. So let's get that unclassified version of the UFO task force that they're promising us, as opposed to the classified version.
One of my favorite films is Interstellar. And, towards the end, the protagonist is in a tesseract. And, it's this sort of, world between worlds, a timeless space. And it's so hard to wrap your mind around it. And I think they make it look a little bit too easy. Like he's just kind of floating in this thing like, oh, okay, I got it. Okay, but I wonder if these phenomena are trying to prepare us. And that's why they won't give us, our version of whatever quote unquote disclosure is, that they're priming us little by little collectively to be ready. I often just think of Terrence McKenna and the experiences he has with crystal-like interdimensional elves on the other side. And maybe that's so bizarre, maybe it's so strange out there that we really are just not ready as a species yet, that collectively we have to find our way. I don't know, but I hope whatever that other thing is a good place. So anyway, Ryan, thank you so much again for joining me tonight.
Ellen, it's such a refreshing conversation I have with you. It bends my mind. It gets me thinking, and I have enough to keep me up tonight here in Hawaii to last a lifetime, brother. So,
yes.
No, thank you. It was an honor being here as always, and I hope we can do it again soon.
Thank you, Ryan. Yes, and enjoy Hawaii for me in lieu of my absence of being able to travel. But to all of you out there, thank you for joining us once again. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on KGRA Radio. If you want to find out more, please follow me on Twitter at paranormal_now or on Instagram at paranormal now. And I'll be posting some videos on IGTV. I kind of gave up on YouTube a little bit just because there's a lot of editing going on and I don't have a lot of time. So look for future posts on IGTV at Paranormal Now. Until next week, I want to thank everyone listening. Please join us 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Support this program. Please support KGRA Radio. And thank you to our wonderful producer, Bill Skywatcher. Until next time, be well, everyone, and live in the mystery.